Good afternoon and welcome to Fox News Sunday. There was an important, if symbolic, event on the campaign trail this week. Although he's been running for months, John McCain formally launched his second bid for the White House. Just weeks ago, he was the frontrunner for the Republican nomination. Now he's slipped in the polls and had a disappointing start raising money. We were with him as he traveled to key states trying to restart his campaign. And we sat down with the senator and his wife Cindy in South Carolina. It's the first in a series of in-depth interviews with the candidates, a new feature that we call Choosing the President. Senator McCain, welcome back to Fox News Sunday on the campaign trail this time.
Thanks, Chris. It's great to be here in one of the beautiful cities in America, Charleston.
It sure is. When Ronald Reagan ran for president, his platform, stripped down to the bark, was just a few words: shrink government, cut taxes, build the military. Using the same shorthand, what is your core platform?
Reform government, fight this Islamic extremist element that is threat that challenges the world, and restore integrity to government.
Many loyal Republicans have grown disappointed with President Bush, and you referred to that in your announcement speech this week. You talked about the mismanagement of Iraq, of Hurricane Katrina. You talked about the failure to control spending. What lessons have you learned from this presidency, and how would your White House, your administration, be different?
Well, one of the major things, of course, is, and one of the reasons, in my view, why we lost so badly in 2006 was spending. We let spending and government grow out of control. We presided over the largest increase in the size of government since the Great Society. The president didn't veto any of the spending bills, and spending far exceeded the revenues that resulted from the tax cuts.
What about the way you'd run the White House? Would you try to have more debate? Would you try to hear from more competing views?
Obviously, I would look at the Reagan style. I would look at Teddy Roosevelt. I'd look at some of the more modern presidents, both successful and not. And obviously one of those, and I think Eisenhower was a good example of having a good structured staff, but at the same time get input from outside your own circle of advisors. Rely on people that I've relied on for many years to give me advice and counsel on a broad range of issues, and they don't necessarily happen to be people who will either work for you or are in your inner circle. I think when presidencies become beleaguered, they have a tendency to circle the wagons. That's a natural tendency. I think we need to get advice and counsel from a lot of smart people all over the country and the world.
For years, you called for Don Rumsfeld to step down. This week, you're calling for Alberto Gonzales to do the right thing and step down. As president, how would you balance personal loyalty with doing what's best for the nation?
I think there's an old Navy saying that loyalty up breeds loyalty down. In other words, you've got to have people who are loyal to you as well as you being loyal to them. But it can't be the most important quality. It's a very important quality, but you also have to expect a certain level of performance that's neither embarrassing to you, embarrassing to the American people, and most importantly, a betrayal of the standards that we expect of public servants.
How would you fight the war on terror differently than it's being fought now?
I would probably announce the closing of Guantanamo Bay. I would move those detainees to Fort Leavenworth. I would announce we will not torture anyone. I would announce that climate change is a big issue, because we've got some image problems in the world. I think that we have got to understand, diplomatic, intelligence-wise, clearly, in the area of, quote, propaganda, in the area of the war of ideas, we are not winning as much as, well, in some ways we are behind. Al Jazeera and others, maybe in the view of some, my view, may sometimes do a better job than we are. At the end of the day, it's how people make up their minds as to whether they want to embrace our values, our standards, our ideals, or whether they want to go the path of radical Islamic extremism, which is an affront to everything we stand for and believe in.
Senator, you talked about torture. Former CIA Director Tenet now says that the intelligence that they got from harsh interrogation techniques against some of these big Al-Qaeda types like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the intelligence they got from them using reportedly things like waterboarding, extreme temperatures, was more valuable than all the other CIA and FBI programs. Were you wrong? I mean, this is the CIA, former CIA director saying this. Were you wrong to limit what CIA interrogators could do?
A man I admire more than anyone else, General Jack Vesey, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Battlefield Commission, told me once, he said, John, any intelligence information we might gain through the use of torture could never, ever counterbalance the image that it does, with that damage that it does to our image in the world. I agree with him. Look at the war in Algeria. Look, the fact is, if you torture someone, they're going to tell you anything they think you want to know. It is an affront to everything we stand for and believe in. It's interesting to me that every retired military officer, whether it be Colin Powell or whether it be former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, everybody who's been in war doesn't want to torture people and think that it's the wrong thing to do. And history shows that. We cannot torture people and maintain our moral superiority in the world, and that's a fact.
But when George Tenet says...
I don't care what George Tenet says. I know what's right. I know what's morally right as far as America's behavior is concerned.
But if I may, sir, when George Tenet says we save lives through some of these techniques...
I don't accept it. I don't accept that fundamental thesis because it's never worked throughout history. And so, again, I know this for a fact, and anyone who's had experience with this, I think that's, the people I respect will tell you that if you inflict enough physical pain on someone, they will tell you anything they think you want to know in order to relieve that pain. That's just a fundamental fact. And we've gotten a huge amount of misinformation as well as other information from these techniques.
The other great issue facing the next president is going to be Social Security and Medicare and what to do about these entitlements as we baby boomers begin to retire. In your announcement, you said that no area, quote, is the object of more political posturing and that we have to make, quote, tough choices. So let me ask you about some tough choices. As part of a compromise to keep Social Security from going bankrupt, would you be willing to cut benefits? Would you be willing to increase the age for eligibility?
Before we get into any of those specifics, you have to know that anyone who gets out front on this issue without sitting down and negotiating with everything on the table will get nowhere. And so I will do what Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill did. I will sit down with the Democrats. We will look at the options on the table. We'll call in the smartest people that we can find, and we'll reach an agreement. I take a position on any of those issues right now. One, it doesn't work, and second of all, it's got to be the product of bipartisan negotiations where people sit down across the table from one another.
Back in 2005, you said you could support an increase in Social Security taxes as part of a compromise. Do you stand by that?
No, and I don't ever recall saying it.
2005. You were asked, it was Lindsey Graham had an idea, and you said, well, as part of a compromise.
Oh, well, I mean, as part of a compromise, I could, if you come up with a benefit, I can accept almost anything, but it's got to be part of a compromise. Am I for raising anybody's taxes? No, I am not. I am unalterably opposed to doing so. But we have to save it, and we have to come together the way that Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan did. I will not support any specific remedy, no matter what I said in 2005, and I believe you're taking that quote out of context because I never said it before.
We'll take a look.
All right, we'll be glad to take a look. But the fact is that we have to sit down together and make choices. And I don't think, and I want to right now tell you, I will not support a tax increase. That's
off the table.
I don't see how it would be. It's off the table certainly now.
You have an 82% lifetime rating from the American Conservative Union. And yet one of the things that always surprises me whenever we have you on is I get email from conservatives who say you're a rhino. You know what that means?
Sure.
Republican in name only.
Sure.
So let's talk about some of the conservative gripes. First of all, immigration. Last year you sponsored a bill with Ted Kennedy that included a guest worker program and a path to earn citizenship. Do you still support McCain Kennedy?
I support many of the concepts in it. It didn't pass. The legislation didn't pass, so we've been sitting down doing intensive negotiations with the president, with other conservative Republicans, and Senator Kennedy to come up with something that will. I think that it certainly is going to be a comprehensive proposal, and it certainly will be border enforcement as the first and foremost priority.